Hello, I'm Jeff Paur, senior editor with RealTime Fantasy Sports, and welcome to the RealTime Fantasy Sports Show. It is time for This Week in the TFC. We're going to start doing this every week. We're going to do a recap of the TFC for the past week. We're going to look at a draft. We're going to highlight a draft every week, and we're going to talk about that draft, some interesting picks, what happened, where people are going, you name it. So we're going to highlight a draft every week, and we're going to talk about everything else TFC as well, ADP when the drafts are coming up also, and maybe we'll have some of the top players on who play in the TFC as well. But for this week, it's going to be Logan Glaser and I talking about this draft. Logan, thanks so much, as always, for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jeff.
So this is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to highlight the TFC every week. It's our biggest contest. Maybe tell the viewers out there a little bit about it, how they can get in, prize pool, you name it. Maybe you can give a quick recap.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so you can enter into the TFC by going under the football tab, clicking on draft times or money leagues, and then search TFC with that. We are averaging about a draft a day right now. You can do a live draft or you can do a slow draft, which that's 2, 4, 8 hours per pick. Those usually last about a week, about 10 days in length with that. For the TFC, it is a $500,000 to first place. You also have other overall prizes along with league prizes. So it comprises of 6,000 total teams in the fantasy championship contest. It's broken down into 12-team leagues. If you win your league or you place high, you can advance to that overall championship, which lasts the last 3 weeks of the season, 15, 16, and 17 for fantasy purposes. And then that's where you can compete for that overall prize.
Yeah, so maybe I'm obviously probably biased because I work for Real Time Fantasy Sports, but I think it's the best big contest out there. Just an awesome overall leaderboard. Our draft product is great as well. You can draft from your phone, your tablet, you name it. Very easy to use. So get in a TFC today. Let's talk about the draft, though. We're going to highlight a draft took place last week. It was last Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern time. So this was the TFC from last week. I'll bring up the board. As you will see, there is a ton of yellow to start the draft. 8 of the first 12 picks were receivers, which isn't really out of the norm, Logan, but sometimes you get a couple more running backs in there. But definitely this draft went very receiver heavy early.
Yeah, the first thing that kind of stands out to me is Tyreek Hill going above Brees Hall, because I usually see Brees Hall going up in that 4 spot. So that's definitely the first surprise that kind of stood out to me. I personally like going Brees Hall over Tyreek Hill, but you can definitely make your case why you would go Tyreek Hill after last
Yeah,
year's
for sure.
performance.
For sure. A lot of people like to play it safe with that receiver position because they know it's pretty chalk with a lot of the elite guys. But I'm like you. I like Hall a lot this year in this situation. I think those top 3 running backs stand out above the rest. And then it gets a little trickier trying to figure out who you want to take after those top 3 guys are gone. This draft went Barkley. Sometimes you see Taylor in that area. It actually went Barkley Gibbs. So Gibbs went ahead of Taylor in this draft, which is a little could be a tad unusual, Logan.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I personally really like Taylor this year. I'm probably going to be targeting him near the end of the first round. So kind of where Barkley ended up going. I think there's a lot of question marks around Barkley this year, just with moving to a new offense, also with Jalen Hurts along the goal line. How does that kind of entail with his rushing touchdowns? But he moves to a much better team with that will score a lot more, better offensive line. So it's kind of hard to gauge because there's a lot of pros for him moving to the Eagles, but then you also have the negatives with rushing touchdowns might be taken away.
So when I look at these early rounds, Logan, the one couple picks stand out to me. The first one's Marvin Harrison Jr. He went with the 5th pick in the second round. He just keeps getting pushed up higher and higher. I think that's the earliest I've seen him go. Usually he's more towards the end of the second round, but that owner in the 8th spot, I believe, took Marvin Harrison Jr. So he took back-to-back receivers with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Marvin Harrison Jr. But I think that's the earliest I've seen him go. I don't know about you.
Yep, I completely agree. That's the earliest I've seen him, and also Neighbors. I think that's one of the
Yep.
earliest spots that I've seen Neighbors go. which I do think Remain in Light was my favorite team on this draft, except I would have liked someone other than Neighbors in that third spot. I loved what he did with Brees Hall, Nico Collins, Christian Kirk, and so on, with Jonathan Brooks, Amir White, Jake Ferguson, and finish off with quarterbacks of Love and Daniel. So I really like that team. Just the Neighbors pick was the only one that kind of like stood out to me. If I would try to go maybe like Ayuk
Yeah,
there instead
Neighbors.
of Neighbors.
I didn't look at his ADP off the top of my head, but I know it's usually in more of that sixth, seventh round neighborhood. So again, with the ADP, you want to take who you want and get them on your roster. But I use the ADP as a guide. I think it's a great tool to use on when to take them. So if you're targeting a player like a Malik Neighbors, you see he has an ADP that's around 7 or 6, take him in around 5. So that's the way I use ADP. It's not a ranking, just a little PSA for everybody out there. But it's definitely a good tool to use for our site. And we're going to talk about ADP a little later as well, Logan, here shortly, and highlight the ADP and the TFC. So we actually have that specific for the TFC. So if you are in our draft guide, you can sort by ADP and you can sort by the different contests on our site. And it's very useful in my opinion, but we'll show everybody that a little later. It's a little tease there. So Logan, again, get back to this draft. 2 tight ends in the second round, Laporta and Kelsey. It's not really out of the ordinary, but that's about when those guys go for the most part. Do you like going tight end that early, or are you going to wait on one?
I don't mind going Laporta that early. Not a huge fan of Kelsey this year, just because of age purposes. He still will get tons of volume, but it's just the question mark will be, does he stay healthy for the full season? But I really like Laporta, and I really don't mind going him in that third round. Um, what's wild is that there's more tight ends going in the first 5 rounds than quarterbacks. You got 5 tight
It's
ends
true.
going out there. Usually we see a couple, 2 or 3 tight ends, but this year we got 5 tight ends going in that first 5 rounds.
Yep, and they all
So
went,
that's
they all went in the first 5 rounds in this draft as well with Laporta, Kelsey, Andrews, Kincaid, and McBride. Kincaid and McBride are the young guys coming up and looking to make waves this year in the NFL, but they definitely have huge upside. I like the way a lot of these drafts. I like to look at the way a lot of these drafts unfolded. There were 2 teams that took 4 receivers with their first 4 picks, which is interesting to me. And I actually think that Chuck Wagon team in round 11 has a make or break pick in my opinion with Cooper Kupp. I think he's going to be a polarizing fantasy figure. He goes in round 4 in this draft again as the 4th receiver for this Chuck Wagon team. I think that's a scary pick, but it also could be a pick that ends up hitting big as well.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, definitely getting cut that late is definitely a hit or miss kind of pick with that. I do really like how that team round rebounded with their running backs though. Going with Aaron Jones in the round 6, and then he also got Zeke and Rico Dowdle for Dallas. So if one of them kind of emerges with that, he can slide them into that running back 2 role and go with those powerhouse wide receivers with that.
To me, both those teams had a strategy that they were going to do this. They were going to wait on that running back position and load up on them because they both did the same thing. The team 4, the Hobo team, had 5 running backs out of the next 6 rounds after that Kincaid pick in round 5. And the team Chuck Wagon in pick 11 did the exact same thing, kind of hoping one of those guys just hits. I mean, probably a couple guys hit, and that's all they need to make up for that. But still, it's a risky proposition, but I think both teams handled it well, and it looks like it was definitely the strategy they wanted to employ going into this draft.
Yep, for sure, and especially in this an overall contest like the fantasy championship, you do wanna take more risk like that, because you're not just trying to win your 12-man league, you're trying to win against all 6,000 teams in the
And then
contest.
the other position I always like to look at is QB. So Hertz was the first QB off the board here. I'm seeing a little more in recent drafts. It's usually between Hertz and Allen, but Hertz went in round 3. Allen goes in round 4. Actually, not too much later, about what is that, 6 picks later, he went after the Hertz pick. So the elite quarterbacks start going off the board in rounds 3 and 4. You got Hertz and then Allen, then Lamar, Patrick Mahomes, Anthony Richardson. But then it waits a little bit. CJ Stroud goes in round 8, Dak Prescott as well. See, for me, I'd rather get those guys in round 8 than one of those elite guys earlier. I think there's different ways you can handle it, but I don't know about you, but I think the
Yeah,
value
I'm
just
kind
seems
of the
better.
same way. I kinda like that CJ Stroud, Jordan Love, Kyler Murray area, even Dak Prescott in there. I think the only quarterback that I'd be willing to pay up for is Lamar Jackson, and that's only if he's going after his ADP. So if he's falling 5, 6 spots after his ADP, then I'm definitely looking into getting him. Other than that, I'm kind of staying away from those top quarterbacks and kind of wanting more one around rounds 8 through 10.
There's different strategies to employ. You can go early, like some of those owners did, or you can go a little later. Like there's two owners that took QBs back to back. Owner one, Kilmer's Coyote, he went back to back QBs in around 10 and 11, took Tua, then Caleb Williams, and then the fifth round owner, who you mentioned earlier, remain in the light. He went back to back QBs with Jordan Love and Jaden Daniels. So both those guys went back to back QBs with a rookie quarterback. I think that's a little intriguing because the rookies carry a little more risk, but they definitely have huge upside as well. So I think if you're going to go back to back, you pair them with a good veteran like that. I like that strategy personally.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I feel very comfortable starting Jordan Love or Tua with that, and then you got that upside with that rookie quarterback on with going right after him. I'd rather go kind of a quarterback like that than maybe like a Aaron Rodgers or Trevor Lawrence, who's kind of going around that same area, just because you have more upside with Daniels and Williams as a rookie.
So a couple mid-round picks we'll mention here quickly before we move on. You have Nick Chubb. I think he's one where I think everybody kind of knows where he's going. So he went in round 10 in this draft as the fourth running back to the Hobo team. So I think that's about right. I think that's where I'd feel comfortable taking him. He's definitely going to be a reserve. I don't know when he'll be healthy. The videos are looking good of him right now, but who knows? He has a bit of a major injury history right now. So that's one pick that always is intriguing to me. What's your thoughts on Chubb? Are you taking a chance on him at all, or are you just going to steer clear of him?
It's hard. I think I'm staying clear of him
Mhm.
just because how with the injury last year, just so hard to recover from that. And I'd rather get a guy that I feel safer with than kind of an aging running back coming back from that history. Ford looked decent last year in replace of Chubb. So even though Chubb might come back, I don't expect him to have a very heavy workload, at least for the first half of the season.
There's a ton of running backs in this round 11, 12 area, 13. You look at them, you have Gus Edwards, Jalen Wright, Jaleel McLaughlin, Ray Davis, Rico Dowdle, Antonio Gibson, uh, Braylon Allen. He's a guy who's kind of moving up draft boards a little bit. Bucky Irving. So you look at all those guys. They're basically guys you're just hoping that they emerge at some point, and become big time players in their offense. Or is there any one out of that group, those guys I just mentioned, that round 11, 12, 13 area, that you're kind of intrigued by, that you're looking to add on your roster?
One round earlier, Charbonnet. I don't mind going him. I actually think that's really good value for him at round 9 with that, because if something does happen to Walker or Charbonnet emerges, then there's huge upside there. But yeah, like you mentioned, most of these are just handcuff running backs. So if something happens to the starter or they play out of their minds, then they get worked into the number one role. But I really like the 6, 7, and 8 rounds for running backs. That's where I think there's so much value in there. You got Najee Harris, Devin Singletary, Jalen Warren, Zach Moss, Aaron Jones. So I think that's kind of where I'm going to be targeting my running backs in those rounds, and then kind of maybe looking for to fill out the rest of my roster with maybe their tight end or wide receivers in that 10 through 12 range.
You know, what's funny to me is in round 11, all three Charger running backs went in the same round. Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, and
Uh,
Imani Vidal. I mean, I like it as a dart throw though, because I think it's gonna be a more run heavy offense with the way Harbaugh runs things. But it's it's kind of funny that all three of them went in the same round. If you had to pick one, would you who would you take out of that trio?
I would probably end up going Gus Edwards. I think just personally,
The goal
but
line potential.
could yeah, goal line potential with that. Also, Dobbins with his injury history. If he had stayed healthy the last couple of years, then I would say he's the most talented running back. But again, there's just so much injury history there. Um, but again, if you're taking one of them in the 11th round and they do emerge as the starter, you have insane value
Yep.
with there. So that's kind of why people are going with those dart throws there compared to a handcuff running back, because that starting job is wide open for the Chargers.
And it's another reason a lot of owners, they think they're getting a jump on things if they draft this time of the year, because they're drafting before the depth charts are set. So they think that maybe they can get a little more value. It's intriguing. Both theories have won. They've won when you pick the day before the season starts. They've won that if you've picked in February. So it's interesting. Both of them win, but it's kind of like the way you stack your team as well. You see all sorts of different strategies win. So it's always fun to see what happens from year to year. All right, Logan, I think that's a pretty good in-depth look at this TFC draft from last Friday. This was the draft that took place at 9 p.m. Eastern time on our site. So good work, all those owners. It was really a good draft. I think there's a lot of teams that are going to challenge for the title in this one. So, Logan, I wanted to, in addition to looking at a draft, just quickly look at the ADP. And we have this great tool on our site where you can look at the trends to where who's going up, who's going down. So if you look at this, I just pulled it up. You can see that Josh Reynolds is the biggest mover of the last week. That's how I have sorted right now. So it's not a huge surprise because there's talk he could end up being the number 2 opposite Cortland Sutton right now. So he's really, his ADP is 231. So he's moved up a lot there, though. So that's kind of intriguing to me. But anybody else on that list you see either going up or down that stands out to you?
Yeah, the one player that I really like on this list is Michael Wilson. I think he can definitely emerge as the Cardinals wide receiver number 2. You see him at kind of near the bottom of this list. He's gone up 4 spots in the last week for ADP. So he's definitely a guy that I'm keeping my eye out for as a sleeper this year.
Yeah, Jonnu Smith and Isaac Guerendo. I'm not very familiar with him. I guess the word on the street now is that Elijah Mitchell is the clear number 2. So maybe that's why uh, his stock has gone down there and he's dropped 8 spots in the last week at the ADP. But Jonnu Smith's another one's kind of intriguing. Miami does not use the tight end. We saw that last season, the season before, they use him more so as a blocker. So I can see why maybe his stock is going down a little bit. And a couple guys else going up. Derek Carr, I'm not sure what prompted that. I don't see anything big changing with him. Jalen Hyatt's another one. He could emerge and get some more playing time, but Demario Douglas is one of them on this list. He's gone up 6 spots. His ADP is 197 now, and I have a lot of stock of him. Someone has to lead that Patriots receiver room in targets. I think it could be Douglas, so I like that pick a little bit late in drafts as a dart throw, but for the most part, this list is a little intriguing and good to look at, though. But you want to take a look at this before your draft comes because there's definitely guys moving up, moving down. You can do that at the draft in the draft guide. It's freedraftguide.com. So if you go to freedraftguide.com, we have a ton of different information in there, articles, we have rankings, we have projected stats, you name it. There's all sorts of stuff on their depth charts, 2Deeps as well, easy to print out and take to your drafts if you don't have a computer. So it's a great tool, and this ADP list is awesome to use as well. You can sort by the TFC, Superflex leagues, Dynasty leagues, Best Ball Championship leagues, regular Best Ball leagues as well. But this ADP right here is showing you all the movers and shakers from the last week here on during the TFC draft. So Logan, that is the ADP list. Next, let's show people how they can get in. So these are all the drafts for our site for the week. For this week, it's 4th of July week. So it's a good time to draft. A lot of you have some days off. We have some drafts set up here, as you can see on the various dates. July 4th, we have one at 1:30 p.m. Central Time. We have one at 8:30 at night as well. Maybe you want to do it before the fireworks, do it at 1:30 during the day. And you can sign up all sorts of different times. We have slow drafts as well, as you can see, 8-hour, 2-hour, 4-hour as well. I will put a link to this in this on the YouTube screen. You will be able to see a link so you can get to this page as well. But Logan, those are all the different draft times for the week. Anything stand out to you?
Yeah,
For
for
those you
sure.
want to
Yeah,
mention?
so we're gonna be doing this on a kind of a weekly basis, kind of breaking down a TFC. So next Friday, July 5th, the one at 9 p.m. Eastern time, 8 o'clock Central time. That's probably one that we will go ahead and review if that league gets full. So if you want your draft broken down, that's one to get into.
Exactly. You can hear Logan and I talk about it on here. Like I mentioned as well, we may end up having some of the owners as well on this show to talk about their team in the TFC. But just a great contest, Logan. A lot of fun and a lot of good chances to win a lot of money this year as well. $500,000 for the TFC champion. Logan, I really appreciate you coming on, joining me for this first ever week this week in the TFC. So it was a lot of fun talking to you about it this week, and I look forward to it next week.
Yeah, for sure, Jeff. Thanks for having me on.
And thanks to all you out there for watching this first edition of This Week in the TFC. We look forward to doing this every week and helping you win that big TFC championship prize this year, $500,000. Go to rtsports.com, click on that Money League link, and sign up for a draft today. This has been Jeff Paur with RealTime Fantasy Sports.